Welcome back into the Sportsmemo College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, where we're breaking down 340, the next 20 games on the rotation number, with today's guest, Teddy Covers. Follow him on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. Teddy, welcome into the podcast.
Hey, great to be here, Drew.
Great to have you. We got a bunch of games going over, some good ones here on the college football slate, starting with 339-340 Tulane at Cincinnati. AAC matchup here, Teddy. We got Cincy laying 7 at home. This is a pretty good Cincy team, with Tulane off a huge win on the road, catching 7, 49 the total, Teddy.
So we were at a conference together right before the football season started. Of course, the Sports Review conference here in Las Vegas. IFBC, I believe it was called. And I got to a discussion about the Cincinnati Bearcats with a couple of guys who I respected at that conference. And I was like, I'm pro Cincy. I like Cincy. They're like, no, Cincy's no good. This Bearcats team, what's to like about them? Well, here's Cincinnati at the end, in October, 5-0 straight up, 1 win from bowl eligibility, 4-1 against the spread. The only game that they didn't cover might have been the most impressive when they rallied to beat Ohio. They only won that game by 4, a 7-point chalk. But what they had to do to win it was dig down deep, get stops against a good quarterback, and put points to the board. They're able to do that. I've been very impressed with Cincy this year. And it's not turnovers. It's not like they're dominating the turnover margin. The defense, only one game have they created more than one takeaway. But Luke Fickell's got this D playing well in Tulane's offense. Again, they ran all over Memphis last week. At home, big spot, big crowd. I think it'll be a little bit difficult for the Green Wave to match that same level against a defensive-minded coach who should have his charges ready to shut down the option.
Yeah, Teddy, Tulane's a tough-minded team. I like them, but I think it just all worked out for him last week because Memphis had a couple D linemen out. That's not the type of offense you want to go against with some defensive front guys out. So I think Tulane took advantage, got to give them credit, but coming up against Cincinnati, I agree with you. They're up against it. And Teddy, handicapping question for you. I will tell you, if I could go back in time, one thing I would do with that exact scenario you just explained, being high on Cincinnati and then letting people, I don't know if you let them talk you off of it.
Of course not. We were just arguing about it.
Okay. I have lost money over the last couple of years letting people talk me off of things, and then it will just come through. I've stopped listening to people in scenarios like that. You just block that out, or? Of
course. Look, You and I do this full time. I'm interested in other full-time bettors' opinions, especially at the start of the season, guys that I respect, especially at the start of the season where maybe they found a piece of information that I didn't find or vice versa. Before kickoff, I'll talk to everyone. After kickoff, I could just shut up. Let me, and I'll do my own, I'll make my own opinions. Thank you. So it wasn't, I cashed with Cincinnati on opening day against UCLA. I'm trying to remember if I had them. I've been tempted by them several times since, particularly the following week against Miami O, and didn't get to the window with them. When it's okay to listen to opinions. However, you need to have your own, and when your own opinion is strong, respect it.
Yeah, and that was a nice call against UCLA, calling Cincinnati on that one. I remember that one. But we'll move down the card here. 341, 342, Ohio, Kent State. MAC matchup here with the Ohio Bobcats laying 12.5 on the road, 70 the total, Teddy.
Yeah, and we got 4 MAC matchups here in a row. I'll go through them fairly quickly. Very impressed with Ohio U. Certainly offensively, Nathan Rourke. He's making plays all over the field right now. But big difference in defensive class between what they faced last week in UMass, what they're going to face this week against Kent. Kind of. UMass is, along with UConn, one of the weakest defenses in all of college football. Kent's defense certainly isn't good. Actually, I say a step down. They've given up 600 yards each of the last 3 weeks. The ugly loss to Penn State, the ugly loss to Mississippi where they got the money. And then last week I thought they might be live as they stepped down against Ball, and instead they gave up 52 points to the Cardinal. Hard for me to make a case for a team that can't stop anyone against an offense that can put up points in bunches.
Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan. Looks like Western Michigan just got hit, Teddy, up from 3.5 to 4 pretty much across the board now, 57.5 the total.
And I can understand the move. Eastern Michigan's really been up again. You look at their last 4 weeks, okay, and no bye during that span. Grinder against Purdue, they win on the final drive. Grinder against Buffalo, one-score game down to the final drive. Grinder against San Diego State. Was that an overtime game? Last week's game was the overtime game against Northern Illinois. Another Grinder game in which they lose by a field goal. So now it's back to back to back, 3 straight Grinder games. They lost at the end. That's not a good spot. And the offense couldn't get they can run the football, and that's about what they can do. Western's so young, they have skill position talent. They have a fair bit of skill position talent. I'm not in love with this defense by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly not like I want to lay points with them in a rivalry game. But offensively, they're a lot more explosive, and they were able to win at Miami, score 40 points last week, put up more than 550 yards in that game despite losing the turnover battle 2-0.
We got Buffalo Central Michigan. This one totaled at 51 with Buffalo laying 7 in the hook on the road.
Yeah, I mean, Central's bet against. This is not a good football team. Very young. Very, very young for John Bonomo this year. And the same thing with Western, in terms of MAC football, where, Central and Western at times over the last decade have been as good as any program in the conference. That's not the case in 2018. Although the Chippewas, despite the fact they've only won one game, they've been covering numbers as dogs. And there's certainly, there's a price to lay with Buffalo here, no question. But the spot for the Bulls coming off that embarrassment at home against Army where they just, they didn't show up from the get-go. That's coming off after 4 straight wins to open the season. We know how good Buffalo's been. Last week was the hiccup game. I can only lay with the road favorite in this one.
Last MAC game here, at least for this section here, Teddy, 347-348. Miami of Ohio at Akron. Looks like Akron laying 5 at home, 49 the total.
Yeah, a lot of respect for the Zips in this number, isn't there? And certainly from a spot standpoint. And remember, Akron's only played 3 games. Miami's only played 5. They played every week. They haven't had a bye. The Zips are coming off a bye, and they didn't play the opening week. Their game got canceled. And, of course, Akron, prior to the bye, straight up win at Northwestern, and then wire-to-wire cover at Iowa State, where the defense played really well in both of those ball games. They scored 3 TDs against the Wildcats. But, and you got to put the but there. It's not like Miami is chopped liver. And since they've stepped down in class the last 2 games, they blew out Bowling Green. They lost by 1 to Western. It's not a team that's easy for me to bet against in this price range, against a squad that I'm not convinced Akron is better of these 2 teams by any type of margin. So if I'm playing this one, I can only look at the road dog.
Teddy, big one here. Arguably the biggest game of the weekend. 349-350. We got Notre Dame at Virginia Tech. Looks like the Irish laying 6.5 on the road, 56.5 the total. A lot of people going to point to Lane Stadium night game, but Notre Dame, new quarterback Ian Book, kind of moving the ball. 2 straight covers, 2 straight wins, and 2 straight overs since the quarterback change. You think it continues here in Blacksburg Saturday night?
I'm not going to lay it. No, I don't think it continues. Certainly not at this level. I don't want to look at too much about a program. When you look at the long-term stats about a program, you don't want to freak out about it. But it's been pretty consistent even in the Brian Kelly era at Notre Dame. Fighting Irish are 3-15 straight up on the road versus ranked teams since 2006. And that's one I did double-check. They are not winning these games. And it's been pretty consistent. Now, this year's Irish team does look better. And the one year where Notre Dame made the playoffs and, lost to Alabama, that was the year they were winning games on the road against ranked teams. This Irish team has that level of potential. And Ian Book, his first 2 starts were great. 6 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, no INTs. This is a different environment playing in Blacksburg at night. And we saw a Virginia Tech secondary that got lit up, absolutely lit up by Old Dominion. Guess what? Last week against Duke, Farley, Quillen, Watts all played really well. They kicked out they kicked off their leading pass rusher, Trevin Hill, got kicked off the team after the loss to ODU. What happened last week? Hoshin Gaines come in and finishes with a career high 2.5 sacks. And of course Ryan Willis, the Kansas transfer, the former walk-on. This kid can't play quarterback. Duke's defense is pretty good. Willis came in, completed 17 of 27, 332, 3 scores, no turnovers, and he won ACC Quarterback of the Week honors in his first start on the road against a good defense. I'm surprised at all the Fighting Irish money that's coming in here. I expect this to be a competitive game.
Teddy, let's head to the bottom of the barrel of the Big Ten. Illinois, Rutgers. Looks like the Illini laying anywhere from 4.5 to 6 on the road, 49 the total.
Yeah, and it's been nothing but Illinois money, and I certainly understand that nobody wants Rutgers right now. No, certainly nobody wants Rutgers in a game where the Scarlet Knights need to win in order to cover the point spread. This is, I mean, for as bad as Illinois has been, I think that, this line's telling us the Rutgers program is clearly in weaker shape, which you don't often say when you're talking about a Lovie Smith team. There aren't many teams that are weaker than those. But, since Rutgers winning the opener, they've been outscored 52-3, 55-14, 42-13. And last week, a distracted Indiana team. They did score 17 in that ballgame, their best during that span, but we're still outgained by 160 yards. The question is, can you lay with Illinois? I mean, I know I don't want Rutgers, but it's an Illini team that's shown us they got a glass chin. It's not like they're even winning home games, let alone and this is their first true road game of the season. I can't lay this price for Illinois, even though I know they have more talent than their opponent. They're not a confident team, and they certainly are not a team that I trust to play well with the lead on the road in the fourth quarter. No, easy pass.
Teddy covers on with us and obviously knows his stuff, really good on the podcast. Teddy, we always get requests to have you on the podcast via Twitter, Facebook, whatnot, people jumping in saying, hey, have Teddy on. Great on the podcast, but I got to point out here, Teddy, I mean, you're over, 60% NFL and college football combined this year, 10-1, 91% sides in the NFL. So hats off to you, Teddy. And guys, check out sportsmemo.com for Teddy's best services, either 3-day, a week, a full season, discounted right now at sportsmemo.com. Wanted to get that out for you, Teddy. Let's head out west. We got 353, 354, San Diego State at Boise State. Looks like Boise laying 14 at home, 52 the total, Teddy.
Yeah, and I know there were guys tweeting at us and asking us about the Friday NFL pod. If you want my NFL stuff, I mean, listen to the Monday, the OLR. Every week you'll get all my NFL opinions in that particular podcast. And, of course, you will get good information at the start of the week. But we got a lot of other guys at Sports Memo that have to get their chance to talk about these games and get promoted. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, I'd rather not do podcasts every. There's only so much podcast time in a world where you have a lot of handicapping to do. But I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the quotes. And again, you want my NFL stuff, you can get it every single Monday in the podcast, the opening line report. San Diego State and Boise. Well, my first reaction to this was, oh my God, that's a lot of points for San Diego State. It really is. Plus 14. That team's good. That team can hang with Boise. Then you start to look at what's actually happened in the season series. And last year's game was and it's not a season. They're on opposite sides of the Mountain West. They don't play every year. They did play last year, though, and it stood out to me because San Diego State was able to move the football against everybody last year, not against Boise. There was a defensive score. There was a special team score, but Rashad Penny, who ended up being, a first-round NFL draft choice, the only game all year that he got shut down last year came against Boise, and the Broncos won that game 31-14 in San Diego. So you're like, all right, well, what happens this time? Obviously Boise's been real good so far. San Diego State is certainly, a team that we continue to have a lot of respect for. Rocky Long in the underdog role is a role we like him in. But the Aztecs playing with their backup quarterback. They're playing with their backup running back. They're going up against a Boise team that's dominated them. And this year's Bronco squad, hey, I want Boise on the road more than I want them at home, the opposite of the way it used to be for the Broncos. But Boise's not looking past his opponent. They're not going to take San Diego State lightly, and Boise defensively has the potential to really shut this team down.
Yeah, Boise, you pointed out, outside of, I believe, the second half against Oklahoma State, they've been lights out, and San Diego State kind of up against it in terms of injuries. So I'm with you with Boise, not looking to bet against them. But we got 355, 356, Arizona State, Colorado in the Pac-12 here. This one's interesting, Teddy. I mean, Colorado, 2.5 at home, 64 the total. Herm Edwards, he's been surprising, at least out of the gate. You think it continues here?
So real quick, when you talk about Oh gosh, I lost my train. I got too much stuff in my brain right now, man. It's one of these crazy mornings. Sorry. You said something I wanted to respond to, and I literally brain farted on it. I got nothing. So let's talk about Arizona State.
It happens, man.
And Colorado. Yeah, exactly. I mean, seriously, when you're like, all right, prep for 20 games on a podcast, make sure you got talking points on all of them. And then you're like, you said something, I should have written it down. I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was. It's brutal. Arizona State, Colorado. So, look, the Buffs, in my mind, are a little bit overvalued right now. And this line is telling us don't trust Colorado. I mean, things have broken well. You look at who they beat in Colorado State. Oh, they blew them out. Well, guess what? Colorado State's been god-awful. Nebraska. Oh, Nebraska hasn't won a game. All right, New Hampshire. Okay, they were 33-point favorites. UCLA, they blew them out. Okay, who cares? They literally, when you're talking about the most disappointing teams in the country, you say maybe Colorado has something to do with it, but Colorado State, Nebraska, UCLA, you can make a case that's 1, 2, 3 for the most disappointing teams in the country, and Colorado's faced them all. So you worry about the value side of the equation. And, I mean, they've got the one wideout who's just a stud, Chanel, who's just, NFL caliber player. And they have McIntyre, who as a coach I really, really admire. But I've seen Arizona State play on the road. They've kept their composure. Manny Wilkins is making plays, and they're the better of the two teams defensively. I don't think there's any question in that regard that Arizona State is a superior defensive ball club. So you got an equal matchup at QB. You got the better defense, and you're catching points. You can understand why the Buffs haven't taken a whole lot of money, and this line's still sitting at 2.5 in most locations.
And Teddy, you say that the line tells us that Arizona's the side. Is that because it's 2.5 across the board? Colorado's laying at home, and we're not seeing many threes.
Sure, we're not seeing. I mean, let's. Let me just give me 1 second, and I'll get you my. I would have thought this line would have come a little bit higher. My number was 4, and the fact that it's open 2.5, and it's sat there. A lot of times around the key number, it opens around a key number. You're going to see the groups move early to take advantage of that key number and get to 2.5 before it moves to 3. This line ain't going there.
Makes sense. Hey, let's take a step down in class here. 357, 358. Liberty at New Mexico State. Looks like Liberty laying 463.5 the total.
Two teams that I have not seen play this year, and I don't recall. I mean, Liberty's one. I can't find info on Liberty. You got good info on it because they're a team I never see, and I really don't read about a whole lot. So I'm not getting involved with. It's an easy pass. Let's put it that way. I'm looking for info and opinions on teams, and these are two squads that I don't know. Certainly Liberty's a squad. New Mexico State, I know. I've seen them play. They're god-awful, which is why Liberty is taking money. Bet up to 4 as we speak. And I'm even seeing 5s popping up around town. Nobody wants Doug Martin's Aggies.
In-state matchup here, Teddy. North Texas at UTEP. Looks like the Mean Green laying 27 on the road, 53.5 the total in El Paso.
Yeah, you want the dog?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Especially in the situation North Texas is in this game after last week.
Yeah, UTEP's covered. I mean, they're 0-5. They're ranked at or near the bottom in every set of power ratings you'll find in college football. They are a bottom 5 team this year, and it's I don't get to the window with bottom 5 teams in college football unless there's a really strong reason for me to do that. And we saw last week Texas San Antonio, who's way down this year, and UTEP. Oh, they covered. They were 10-point dogs. They lost by 9. They covered against Tennessee, too. What happened? They got shut out in that game. Tennessee just didn't put the ball in the end zone. And they got, they were outgained by 378 yards. UTEP is bad. North Texas, those guys were monsters. You saw what they did to SMU, and then Arkansas, and then Liberty. And then last week, the hiccup against La Tech. It's a Mean Green team that's been on a mission in early season play. They've certainly been great money makers. They had a bad second half last week. Outscored 20-0 in the third quarter after taking. Oh, sorry, that was the second quarter. They didn't score a point in the fourth quarter last week, though. That's certainly worth noting for North Texas, which is something I wouldn't expect to happen 2 weeks in a row. And then in-state rival, yes, long way to travel. Texas is a big state, man, going from Denton to El Paso.
Teddy, let's head to the Pac-12 for the next 2 games. Washington at UCLA to start us off. Looks like Washington 21 on the highway, 50.5 the total.
Yeah, I mean, the markets are really struggling to find anyone who's going to bet UCLA, which is why we're seeing numbers like this, where they're 21-point dogs against an opponent. Say what you want about the Huskies. They scored 16, 21, 27, and 35 in 4 games against D1 competition. This is not an explosive offense. They've not yet gotten 500 yards of offense in a game. And it comes down to the quarterback play. I mean, I feel like I say the same thing about Washington every week. They got NFL wideouts. They got NFL running backs. They don't have an NFL quarterback. And it makes it difficult for me to lay points with them in this range. That being said, they're 5-0 to the under so far this season. This defense is absolutely dynamite. And UCLA is, I'm not even calling them a work in progress offensively. They're getting worse, not better. It's clearly a situation where there is no quarterback. They're getting, you want to talk about a team that has no seniors contributing? Go look at what UCLA seniors have done this year. Chip Kelly's going younger, and youngest. And that's not necessarily a good sign for UCLA in 2018, although it could be a positive sign for the future.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. It might not be good for this year, Teddy, but to get those young guys some experience, it's kind of like the economy. Sometimes you want it to hit bottom so it can bounce up fast, not just slow roll as far as no production there from the UCLA squad. But let's stay in the Pac-12. Utah at Stanford. Looks like 46 the total, with Stanford laying 5 at home. This Utah team, Teddy, I don't know what they did to the Pac-12 schedule makers, but they got all the big boys from the North Division. Here's another one.
Yeah, and that's again, it's early season play. And just looking real quick. The Pac-12 is no joke, man. But after this, they had Arizona, then USC, then UCLA, Arizona State, Oregon, Colorado, and BYU. It's not a lot of easy games for Kyle Whittingham's squad this season. And the Utes are another team that you look at the offense and you say, okay, who can make a play for Utah? I haven't seen it. I really haven't seen it when they face anything resembling good. Look, Tyler Huntley's got 821 passing yards on the season. Zach Moss can run the football. They can hand off to Moss. Playmaking receivers, I haven't seen any. I really haven't seen any. Huntley's not chucking it around downfield. It's a dink and dunk and run the football type of offense, which Stanford, in theory, should be able to stop. On the other hand, you worry about the energy level for the Cardinal. That wild game against Oregon and then the blowout at Notre Dame. They got the bye coming up. In theory, it's supposed to be circle the wagons for the Cardinal after this one. Very competitive series. Last year, Stanford laying 4.5 on the road. They only won by 3. And I wouldn't be surprised here at all if this is a relatively tight defensive struggle, even though KJ Costello has the ability throw the football around the field. Utah's defense, rock solid. It really is, both against the run and the pass.
We got 365, 366. Fresno State at Nevada. Looks like Fresno laying 14 on the highway, 58 the total.
Yeah, key info here as we speak. As of this morning, Ty Ganji, the Wolfpack quarterback, has been downgraded to doubtful, and that certainly is a significant issue, considering that Ganji's been, 11 touchdowns, averaging 7.3 yards an attempt. He's a dual threat guy, can run out of the pocket, and that Wolfpack offense, they've been really good. And with Mannix and Fossum as a pair of big play wideouts, I thought, and my initial reaction this game was, I like the over here. I like the over, and then of course now the QB's hurt, and I don't like the over so much. The markets are finally getting Fresno right after a year and a half of being an absolute juggernaut that has been priced like a good team, but not a great team. Now we're starting to see Fresno laying 2 TDs on the highway. And we talked about this with Alabama last week, and it played out perfectly. Hey, guess what? When your team leads at halftime 49-0 and they don't cover the point spread, that tells you that the value period for that team is come and gone. Here's Fresno, who's been a great value team in recent years. Now here they are laying 2 touchdowns on the road against a team that can put the biscuit in the basket. That tells us pretty clearly the Bulldogs, I mean, this has been a really impressive point spread run. It's lasted a year and a half right now. And point spread runs can last like that, especially when we're talking about teams that are coming from the absolute bottom and teams that are playing in non-Power 5 conferences. But like any point spread run, eventually the team gets priced correctly, and I think we're starting to see that with McMarion and the Bulldogs at this stage of the campaign.
Teddy, you said that's how you know the value's starting to go. What were you saying as your example there?
Well, I was using Alabama as an example. Where Alabama last week, we talked about it on last week's podcast. I'm like, there's no value with Alabama anymore. They're killing teams and not covering. And last week, Alabama scores 7 touchdowns in the first half against Louisiana Lafayette and doesn't cover the point spread. There you go. That's when they dominated the game as much as they could possibly dominate it and didn't cover. So Fresno's been just killing teams and crushing teams and killing them and crushing them. And we haven't seen Fresno being priced in this range. At minus 14 in Reno, we're seeing that the markets aren't sleeping on Fresno anymore.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I missed that portion of what you were saying just because your boy the Greek was calling the office.
Right on. Hey, Greek.
Yeah, I'll let him know you said hello. We got 367, 368 Washington State at Oregon State. Looks like Washington State, the Cougars, laying 17 on the road, 64.5 the total, Teddy.
I mean, when you start talking about the worst team in any given conference, and Oregon State is the weakest team in the Pac-12. It's when you want to find spots where your opponent either is looking ahead or maybe there's a matchup edge that you don't find, or that isn't readily apparent. You want to get to the window with the bottom feeders. There's got to be a kicker. There's got to be something that, not in a real kicker, but there's got to be something in the equation that stands out. And I mean, maybe you got the spot here for Washington State. They're coming off 2 grinders in USC and Utah. They have the bye on deck, followed by Oregon and Stanford, and here they are, laying 17, on the road at Oregon State. But I mean, and of course the recent meetings. Washington State's been able to do whatever they wanted to offensively, but Oregon State's been able to put up points against this team. Last year 52-23. Last visit to Corvallis 35-31. The visit before that to Corvallis 39-32. And of course, when we talk about, I mean, it's 5 years ago, but 5 years ago, Washington State's plus 8.5 in that game at Corvallis. So in 2014, which speaks to where these two programs have moved. Over the course, where the fifth-year seniors are right now. So, yeah, you can make your case for Oregon State here as the, as the feisty home dog, I suppose. You don't love the spot for the road favorite in this one, but it's that type of a leap that you have to make for a team that, defensively, they are getting absolutely annihilated in every game. So, you saw the Ohio State game. It didn't stop. The only team Khalil Tate moved the football against all year was Oregon State. The Sun Devils hung 52 on them last week, 558 yards. It's a defense that, in theory, Washington State should be able to score many, many points against, as long as they keep their focus.
Teddy, if I had to look over the whole card and there was a number that surprised me and I said, what the heck is up with this number?
Me and you both.
It's this next game, 369, 370, Cal at Arizona. We got Cal now laying 2.5 on the road, 57 the total. Have at it, man.
Yeah, and when it's funny because you and I probably do the same thing on Sunday. I'm making numbers, and then I'm looking to see, and you're just looking what jumps, and this one happens. What the heck? Arizona's laying 2.5, and well, now they're not. The markets took care of that problem pretty quickly. Look, I mean, last week's debacle against Oregon for Cal. I mean, it was certainly turnovers were a problem. That being said, they were -4 in turnovers for the game. That being said, they got 10 turnovers in the last 3 games. And when you talk about a Cal team that, they've been playing QB shuffle a little bit. When you got 3 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. I mean, we thought Bowers was going to be the guy, and he hasn't this year so far. For the Bears, and now, of course, the markets have moved 5 points in their direction as we thought it would, and the number jumped. And there's still questions about the QB position. But, I mean, Arizona, I don't want Arizona. I'll just put it that way. They beat Oregon State. They beat Southern Utah. Everything else has been a disappointment. Last week, even in the game against USC, they're +2 in turnovers. They dominate the fourth quarter, and the kicker comes in and misses the extra point. They don't cover the number. It was a brutal beat if you had Arizona plus the points. But I'm not seeing the Kevin Sumlin turnaround. Haven't seen it yet. For Arizona off that bad start, and Tate just doesn't look like the same QB he was a season ago.
Teddy, we got New Mexico, UNLV, 62 is the total, and it looks like UNLV laying 8.5 or 9, mostly 9s now in the marketplace. What are you hearing on UNLV there in town? Is it and Armani Rogers? He's banged up, right?
He sure is. Both teams are banged up at the QB position, and this is a game with a ton of question marks. We have seen a fair bit of money for the Lobos in the contest because of Rodgers being banged up, and it doesn't look now as if he's going to be able to go necessarily. And the fact that, say what you want about UNLV, home favorite has not been their role at any point in the last 2 decades, and I can say that as someone that's lived in Las Vegas for the last 2 decades, laying points with even in the Tony. I mean, it's been regardless of coach, but even in the Tony Sanchez era. As a home favorite, they did have one winning season in 2015 ATS, but that included Idaho State, which they don't have on the card this year. And of course, you all remember UNLV last year laying 45 at home to Howard, a game they lost in straight up fashion. Bob Davies squads have given the Rebels a fair bit of troubles in recent years. I don't like this New Mexico team, and again, I talked about Liberty, and I haven't seen Liberty play. I didn't see them. I didn't see the box score when they wiped out New Mexico, and it's a Lobos team that just, there are years where it seems to click, and there are years where it doesn't seem to click quite so much. And this year for New Mexico, they just haven't been able to put it together. And again, coming off a 3-9 campaign last year. Davey had 2 winning seasons in Albuquerque, and this is his 7th year on the job. He certainly is under pressure right now, although it's, New Mexico's, I'm not going to call it a hopeless program, but it's kind of a hopeless program.
And Teddy, UNLV's kind of located, they're still at Sam Boyd Stadium, right?
Yes, which is, I would call it one of the weaker home fields in college football.
Okay, and are they going to be there next year until the new stadium's up, or?
Yeah, I haven't. Is it official that they're playing at the Raider Stadium?
I don't know.
I honestly haven't followed it.
Okay.
I know there was talk they were going to play at the Raider Stadium, but as to whether it actually happened or not, I don't know. And I think UNLV can't sell out an NFL stadium. They couldn't sell out half an NFL. It'll be like Tulane when they used to play in the Superdome. There'll be 6,000 fans at the bottom, and that's that.
Yeah, although a lot of the new stadiums, like Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, they have like new features where the upper deck becomes like covered and it kind of looks nice, and it becomes a really smaller stadium for like soccer and stuff. So I could see them kind of transforming it into that for UNLV games.
Maybe. But the bottom, I honestly don't know. Okay. It's still. UNLV's not. The stadium's not going to be built till 2020, so it's not anything's going to happen next year.
Good stuff, Teddy. We got 373-374 Northwestern, Michigan State, 43.5 the total, with Sparty laying 10 in East Lansing. Yeah,
and Northwestern's given this. You want to talk, and again, sometimes they are, regardless of the record, regardless of the team, just every year this squad lives, that squad trouble. And Northwestern just gives Michigan State trouble. They had last year triple overtime. Wildcats won on a touchdown in the 2-point conversion, 39-31 final. The year before, they won in East Lansing, 54-40. So their offense has worked against Sparty's defense. And, Northwestern certainly gave Michigan everything they could handle last week. The offense couldn't get the job done in the second half, and they kind of let it get away from them at the end. So from a spot standpoint, you worry about them hitting the highway here off that type of a defeat. But, Michigan State, there are things to like about Michigan State. Michigan State is big chalk. Double-digit chalk is not my favorite role for a Mark D'Antonio team. I like the worky at QB, but I've been underwhelmed with the skill position talent around him. Price looks a little bit rich to me for the Spartans, especially considering What did we tell you about Northwestern last week? All you do is just take the dog in every Northwestern game. You make a profit every year. Lo and behold, it's working very well once again in 2018.
Heading to the Big 12, we got Kansas at West Virginia. Looks like 61.5 the total, with West Virginia laying more than 4 touchdowns now, 28.5 pretty much across the board, Teddy.
And the Jayhawks have actually been, I'm not going to say giving them battles, but they've been able to put up points in every recent year against Kansas. Now, I know that this West Virginia defense this year is better than the one that we've seen in recent years. But, last year, 56-34. Kansas, got put up points. The year before, 41-28. Kansas putting up points. So, can they do it again this year against this defense? I don't like the spot for West Virginia. Coming off the big win against Kansas State, and the big win against Texas Tech, and that was, that was tight in the fourth quarter. West Virginia did their best to blow that game. If it wasn't for a Texas Tech pick six, West Virginia late pick six, as the Red Raiders were rallying down the field to tie the game, the Mountaineers might have lost that contest. So from a spot standpoint, I worry about them in this one. And again, this is a Kansas defense. Last week, Kansas offense, I say they were outgained by 200 yards against Oklahoma State, but they didn't turn the ball over, and they put 28 points on the scoreboard. There's not we've seen enough offense from Kansas this year to say, hey, maybe this team can come through the back door every once in a while. Although, again, when you're playing Kansas, you're playing the weakest team in any conference. There is that leap of faith. I'm not going to get to the window with them, even though I could only play the Jayhawks in a game that I worry about West Virginia and looking past them.
Teddy, heading to the SEC here, we got Alabama at Arkansas. With Alabama, Nick Saban and company laying, 5 touchdowns on the road, 35 right now, pretty much across the board, 56 the total.
Well, Arkansas couldn't move the ball against A&M. They couldn't move the ball against Auburn. They really didn't move the ball against North Texas, for that matter. Colorado State's got one win. That win came against Arkansas in a game where they couldn't move the ball for extended stretch in the second half of that game. They were outscored 17-0 by in the fourth quarter. I don't trust Arkansas to score any points against Alabama, and if Alabama's got the chance, of course they'll go for the shutout. Where's the weakness that this offense can exploit? It's not there.
No, it's not.
It's 41-9 last year, 49-30 the year before that.
There was a Alabama one a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was 2015 was a tight game, but you can't. The time to bet Alabama, and I give you credit. I didn't bet Alabama. I rarely play Alabama games, but if you were betting Alabama in September, you cash a couple tickets. Beat Louisville, beat Arkansas State, beat Mississippi, all wins and covers. Last 2 weeks they dominate A&M and don't cover, and dominate Lafayette and don't cover, and that tells me the markets are caught up with this team. When you're +2 in turnovers and you're gaining 600 yards of offense and outgaining your opponent by 320 yards, and you're not covering the spread, no bargains for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I don't want to bet them over because I don't think Arkansas can score. I don't want to bet them under because Alabama could score in every possession. Easy pass.
Fair enough. We got one game left here, and guys, remember Teddy has his 91% sides, and he's got it up here at sportsmemo.com. That's in the NFL, over 60% in college football and NFL year to date. Check out sportsmemo.com for Teddy's services, discounts on the full season package. We got last game up, Teddy, 379-380 UAB. The Blazers going on the road to play Louisiana Tech, and it looks like Tech's laying 9.5 at home, 55 the total, Teddy.
Yeah, and you make a point there. Please, if you're going to buy something, don't buy any of my plays. Do not don't pay for a play. Get a weekend package, get a weekly package, get a monthly package. I understand, if you're on a limited bankroll, you're not going to sign up for a season. That's fine. Get on board. Let me show you what we can do. It doesn't have to be me. There's lots of quality handicappers, guys who do this full time at sportsmemo.com. But I encourage you, don't pay for a play. Get a weekend. Get a week. Get a month. Get on board. Look, La Tech and UAB, interesting game. I certainly like La Tech in the dog role a lot more than I like them in the favorites role. And that's been the case throughout the Skip Holtz era. They're coming off a big win against North Texas, and they're facing a team that in UAB that is absolutely live to come through the back door. And UAB's 3-1 right now. Although all 3 wins at home, the one loss was a bad loss. They were laying 9 and lost by 23. And that was their lone game on the highway, which is certainly something of a concern. But, that UAB, I'm not going to call it explosive, but UAB does have some quick strike ability. I like Ederle. I don't love him, but you can chuck the ball downfield. And the other thing UAB can do is they can grind. You see Spencer Brown running the football. You see Ederle having his chances. You see Kingston Davis moving the football on the ground. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if UAB hangs around in this one. It's not the La Tech role. That being said, Bulldogs are the better of these two teams, and maybe by a fairly wide margin.
Teddy, thanks for the time on the podcast. Anything else you want to throw out before we shut this down?
Yeah, enjoy the games. Good luck. Bet with your head not over it. Blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. Thanks for listening.
All right, Teddy Covers. Follow him on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. We'll be right back with Robbie Veno to finish out the college football betting card on Every Game on the Board podcast.